Chapter 214. Someone's Lord, 1. My Lord. My heart. My blood. My everything in this world. Tuck. The sound of dripping water could be heard from somewhere. When the drops fell, they landed not on the ground, but on eternity. Tuck. Tuck. For a short while only the sound of dripping water could be heard, then the surrounding gravity seemingly disappeared, and time continued to slowly pass. I suddenly raised my head. It was only after raising my head that I realized my head had been lowered in the first place. When exactly did I lower my head? What time was it now? I didn't know. Warning. The subject's ego is unstable. Ugh. My eyebrows rose reflexively. I had a terrible headache. The thumping sensation in my brain made me nauseous. Baron Gu 1. Ha! At that moment, I heard a soft voice. Are you okay? I struggled to open my eyes and look to the side. A child with hair the color of a snow rabbit was looking at me with a worried gaze. This was probably my first time seeing her, so I didn't know why. My lips were able to pronounce her noble title with ease. Yes. I'm fine. Your Excellency the Marquis. Marquis Beck Seal 2. She was only 16 this year. Due to the sudden death of the previous Marquis, her young shoulders had been laden with the overly heavy cloak of responsibility. According to the rumors floating around the family, there had been thoughts to use her as a scapegoat. If Viscount Jung hadn't taken her in, she might have already been assassinated by now. Warning. The subject's ego is unstable. Continuing to reproduce trauma. Jiaying dash. Ugh. It felt like my head was about to split open. I quickly called upon my magic power. Forcibly ignoring the bitter taste on my tongue, poetic language began to flow from my mouth. Stability and relaxation. One poetic word to calm the mind. One poetic word to ease the pain. When the spell that corresponded to the 3 words was activated, my headache subsided greatly. Whew. I let out a sigh. I didn't have the time to make a sublime poem, so I just hurriedly picked words, but fortunately, it worked. It was at that moment that I realized I was one of the 12 best wizards in the kingdom. Are you really okay? Your face is very pale. Nothing's wrong. Thank you for your concern. Really? Are you really not feeling uncomfortable anywhere? Marquis Beck Seal 2 checked my condition several times. While telling the Marquis I was all right, I calmly diagnosed the abnormality within a corner of my mind. I'm having trouble recalling my memories. The headache was gone. But there was a feeling of strangeness when it came to my memories. It couldn't be mind magic, could it? It was a difficult possibility to think about. In the history of the kingdom, there had been very few cases of magic being used on the minds of others. Not to mention that this place was the Platinum Tower. A place where all the nobles of the kingdom had gathered to have a serious meeting. The bodyguards mobilized to protect the council members were simply amazing. They were warriors under the direct control of the royal court who had been stationed to keep even an ant out. If anyone tried to do anything reckless in this place, they would lose their neck even if they were a dragon or a god. Perhaps it's just because I'm tired. I quietly cast another spell. If there really was a problem with my memory, I'd simply restore it. Information, Beck Seal 2 restored. For some reason, I felt accustomed to the phenomenon of losing my memory. It wasn't that strange. As if I was prepared for a situation like this, I even had a plan prepared. My elaborate preparation floated before my eyes. Beck Seal 2. Identity, noble. Marquis. Relationship, Viscount's adopted sibling. Danger rating, white. Remarks, head of the Rabbit Marquis family. Lost her parents at a young age. Was taught to be a successor by her grandfather, Marquis Bec Metu. Unlike her grandfather, who was a renowned genius, Bay Seoltu was a notorious dimwit since her youth. In the winter of her 12th year, she whipped a Freeman child to death. The reason was because she didn't like seeing the families of people her age smiling so happily. Freemen were essential tenants who paid rent to the lord of a territory to use their land. It is presumed that her grandfather's teaching was quite strict. She was not praised or shown love. Although she now displays a determined attitude, she still craves for the love and praise of Viscount Ja Young. She considers Viscount Ja Young as her mother and elder sister. Ally. No need to kill. Strength, self-understanding, strong morality, personal connections, capital. Weaknesses, murder of a freeman, murder of a child, guilt, lethargy, kind-heartedness, temporary infantile regression, extremely low self-confidence. Note, many nobles are dependent on the Marquis. Assassination is difficult. As soon as I was made aware of this information, I felt relieved. But I blinked as I had a strange feeling. As expected, something was strange. Did I always have this ability? This information that I'd thought up were probably notes that I had written myself. After seeing it, I should have had I wrote that kind of feeling. Strange. But instead of feeling assured, the strange feeling just grew stronger. Even at that moment, as I thought in my head, there was an uncomfortable feeling in my mouth as though I had a fish bone stuck in my teeth. What is it? This. Just in case, I checked with magic to see if I had been affected by mind magic, but as expected, there was no problem. Wait a minute. Magic? One of the top 12 wizards in the kingdom? Me? No. I didn't use crude words like that. I had a bit more decorum, like a noble. Warning. The subject's ego has been weakened. That's right. Why had I been speaking informally all this while? Magic was the art of refining language into matter. It was imperative to always be careful with language. Even if it was just my own inner thoughts, I always had to put myself in a humble position so that I wouldn't forget the wonders of this world. That was the heart that I steadily walked to the path of magic with. I have to pull myself together. 1,000 words piled up and became 100 habits. 100 habits built up and solidified into 10 behavioral patterns. 10 behavioral patterns determined one life. As a wizard who served closely by the Viscount's side, I should not take even a single word lightly. What's going on here? It's so noisy. While I was trying to pull myself together, another figure approached. Marquis Bec Seoltu recognized her first and bowed her head. Viscount Sun Hyuk-sin. Why are you here? I bowed my head too. Today is the last break. Wouldn't it be better to rest in the lounge? Even if I rest in the lounge, it wouldn't really be resting. Just by sitting there, the nobles of other factions will stare. Viscount Sun Hyuk-sin smiled bitterly. I feel like I can't stand it because of the random words that they pour out at us. I'd be more comfortable if they just cursed openly. I should have stayed in the conference hall like the Marquis. I dash, is the atmosphere as you expected? Did the stone medicine faction pressure you? There isn't really any distinction between the stone medicine, inner energy and religious factions. They all treat us like sinners. Well, it's sad, but it's not too big of a deal. I listened politely to the conversation between the Marquis and the Viscount. Both of them were senior members of the Mirror faction. In particular, Viscount Sun Hyuk-sin served as the chairman. It was one of the most important positions in the faction. That was how much she was favored by the Viscount. He must be a favored noble. But I wasn't confident in my memory. Hesitantly, I cast the information spell. Sun Hyuk-sin. Identity, noble. Viscount. Relationship, Viscount's lover. Danger rating, blue. Remarks, head of the Black God * Viscount family who revolted 20 years ago. The rebellion was suppressed by the apathetic Duke dispatched by the royal family. At that time, Sun Hyuk-sin was the only one to survive. Hyuk-sin equals Black God. In the incident, Sun Hyuk-sin lost all of her family and vassals. She vowed vengeance on the Duke and the kingdom for not showing any mercy. Afterwards, she disappeared and went under the leadership of the Black Witch, the leader of a new rebellion. She was taught the ritual of darkness by the Black Witch. The detailed process was unknown, but it was said that more than 300 humans had been devoured by Sun Hyuk-sin in the ritual. She was captured by Viscount Young just before the ritual could be completed. Afterwards, she was reduced to a toy of the apathetic Duke and Viscount Young, but 6 months later, she regained her intellect and was freed. Nevertheless, her eating habits have not changed, and even now, Viscount Young would give her feed. Ally. Can't kill. Strengths, genius, strong willpower, ascendant. Weakness, descendant of rebels, cannibal, former wanted criminal, music. Notes, could be a very capable assassin if taken as a vassal. It still felt strange. I still understood the information, but it felt like reading someone else's writing. More than that, why did I write something like, can't kill? Even the information of Marquis Beck-Seoltu contained a similar phrase. That one was, no need to kill. That made me feel like a psycho who determined who I could and couldn't kill. I have normal ethical beliefs. At least that's what I felt. It was hard to understand why those phrases were written. Of course, we shouldn't just sit around and lament on a day like this. Viscount Sun Hyuk-sin sighed and tapped me on the shoulder. Suddenly, an unpleasant feeling passed through my mind. So annoying. Please stop pretending like we're close. This person, whenever they have time, always tries to show that the two of us are in the same situation. On the subject of killers. I feel sorry for people who only feel alive when they are together with their own kind. Well, if this person wants to find her own kind, she'd have to fall to hell first before searching. She doesn't want to go to hell, so she's sticking to me instead. There is nothing more annoying than that. Ha. Just now, what was I thinking? Baron Gu 1.
Ha!
Your complexion is a bit bad right now. Are you feeling discomfort somewhere? That's right. Her complexion hasn't looked good for a while now. The Baron should go to the lounge and rest. This chapter was originally shared via /n/o//vel/b/in. No. I managed to open my mouth. When I opened my mouth, words that I hadn't been thinking naturally flowed out. We have already been given 5 breaks. There is no point in resting any further. The few issues remaining on the agenda are the core focus of our faction, so I would like to maintain my position as much as possible. Indeed. Viscount Sun Hyuk-sin nodded with an expression as if she understood my words. Today is a historic day. It will be the first time in 1,000 years that the kingdom will welcome a new duke. I also have mixed feelings. Viscount Sun Hyuk-sin turned her head. The gazes of Marquis Beck-Seoltu and myself naturally shift as well.
So,
Jung is delighted. In the middle of the conference hall sat a blonde noble. No. It would be too much to say, sit. The noble was resting her cheek against the throne with her buttocks on the ground. And the king, who sat on the throne, smiled as he stroked the noble's head. When such affection was shown in the middle of the conference hall, the conservative nobles lamented that the country was ruined. Viscount Sun Hyuk-sin said. A lot of nobles ran to the lounge because they didn't want to see that. When I told them the truth that he sincerely loved her, their expressions were not good. Those old-fashioned bastards. Did this person just have a similar thought to me? Did I share similar thoughts with a murderer? I wanted to grab a blade and scrape my brain clean. Thinking of a way to clean my skull, I looked at the blonde noble, who was more precious to me than anyone else. Information, Ja.
So.
Jung, restored. Letters then appeared before my eyes once again. It was very concise compared to the others. However, these exact words hung in the air before me. Ja.
So.
Jung. My lord. My heart. My blood. My everything in this world. Ha. That person is my lord? At that moment, my head began to clear. The owner of my heart is Raviel. What bullshit is this? No, my head was clear. The fog in my mind disappeared in an instant. Who is Baek Seol-tu? Who is Sun Hyuk-sin? Where am I? Why the hell am I speaking so politely? Wizard? Gu-won?
Ha!
Baron? Why aren't they using Kim Gongja? My eyes opened like someone waking up from a nightmare. I am Kim Gongja. Kim Gongja. The Death King of Ascension City. The moon of Duke Ivantia, the young master of the demonic cult, and the companion of the goblin race. Finally, I heard the voice of the tower. The subject's ego has been restored. Confirmed that the subject's ego has been maintained. Continuing to reproduce trauma. Chapter 215. Someone's lord, too.
Ugh.
I grabbed my forehead, pressing my fingertips against my skull. Then, the headache disappeared, and I slowly regained my senses. Right. I'm in a trauma right now. This was a different world. No, it was a play that had been created by imitating a certain world. The actors didn't know they were actors, and the props didn't know they were props, but all the people who came and went here were part-timers hired for the play. This is inside the Tower Masters. Ja.
So.
Jung's trauma. I have been looking at the life of Ja.
So.
Jung for a while now. How talented she was. How ridiculous the manner she broke through the political offensive was. Who she got close to, how she gained power, and finally, how she took the power of the dragons. The tower was built with the power of the dragons. I could not say it with certainty. It's not a place that was built with a single power. The power to deal with essence, the power to deal with memory, the power to deal with time. And maybe the powers of other dragon emperors as well. The powers of so many dragons combined, created a very comprehensive system. Ba-bump. The heart that wasn't mine pounded with my rhythm. I'm the first to unearth the structure of the tower. It was almost as if it responded to my pounding heart. Despite it being a trauma, the tower's voice still responded to my discovery. Congratulations. You are the first to discover the structure of the tower. If you can describe the exact powers, skills, that support the structure of the tower, you will receive an additional bonus. Can you reveal which 4 fundamental skills make up the tower? I wiped the sweat from my forehead. Ja.
So.
Jung captured 3 dragons. Recalling the things I'd seen, I murmured in my mind. One of them is the Earthbone Dragon. The Dragon Emperor who had the power to store memories. When someone gets close to the Earthbone Dragon, he would store their memories in a box. I thought about the power of the Earthbone Dragon. And the size of the box is not fixed. The Earthbone Dragon's skull. Rank SSS+. Effect: the ability to archive the memories of the living. Archived memories are placed in a box that can only be destroyed by the user. Unless the box is destroyed, the user can recreate the body of a person who will inherit the same memories over and over. The body can travel around the world, create new memories, and update those experiences back to the box. Of course, if the user allows it. Even if the body is completely destroyed, the box will not suffer any damage. Grant the privilege of immortality to those around you. However, the memories of a destroyed body cannot be updated to the box. I thought. Anyone who lived outside could enter the tower. On the other hand, new entrants left everything on the outside and entered the tower with only their bodies. Like me. Like Marcus Callenbury. Just like the director. Like everyone else. The only thing you can bring into the tower is yourself. In other words, what if the tower is one big box? I snapped my fingers. And what if we are in it? As soon as I became an entrant, my memories were stored in the huge box called the tower. And I entrusted my memories to the tower while walking around in the world inside the tower. With that, the tower would gain access to all of the information of everyone in the tower. The more I thought, the more certain I became. That explained why I could return 4,000 days in the past. Every time I returned a day, the tower restored 1 day's data restoration point. After 4,000 iterations, the tower reset to a data restoration point from 4,000 days before. However, in the process, because of my skill, only my data was updated in the tower. Data restoration point forcibly returned to 4,000 days in the past. Additional code due to skill, maintain the continuity of character Kim Gongja. That was why I could return without losing my memories. Good. If that's the case, then the tower is a gigantic memory box. Our memories aren't in our brains but in our towers. It's a great library where our memories are stored. No, it's a great library for souls. That is the identity of the tower that I've deduced. How about that? The tower's voice responded quickly. Correct answer. Acknowledge that you have broken through the first gate. The Earthbone Dragon's box forms the outer shell of the tower. Okay. It must be the same logic that allows us to move between worlds. I had moved between the worlds of the Tales of Somerwin Academy and Chronicles of the Heavenly Demon. Strictly speaking, that transfer was more like transmission. However, the only thing I found hard to understand was how the Tales of Somerwin Academy and Chronicles of the Heavenly Demon were incorporated into the tower just like us. I frowned and rubbed my forehead. Then, annoyingly, the nobles around me started talking. When the Viscount receives her title of Duke, should we call her Duke? It feels like she's further away. Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung allows anyone to call her whatever they like, so it won't be a problem to suddenly create and share a nickname. Nickname. Did you not hear Marquis? Viscount Simon Chal is called This One's Princess by Ja.
So.
Jung, and the Ultimate Sword Duke is called This One's Dear Husband. Those are names that only those people can monopolize. She might even make one for the Marquis. It's a bit embarrassing to hear others say it. Doesn't it make you think that Ja?
So.
Jung is cute instead? I can't decide. It was hard to ignore them even if I wanted to. Because everything they said was related to the Tower Master. People kept leaking information about the owner who created this world, and no matter how small it was, I couldn't help but be interested in it. I need time to organize my thoughts. I suddenly realized that the current me had that ability. Magic power flowed through this body. To be precise, it was as if this entire body was made of mana. I wasn't sure what I looked like now since I hadn't gotten the chance to look at a mirror, but this person's flesh, blood, and bones were all made of mana. In short, so was the brain. Consciousness, acceleration, time. The nerves in the brain were mutated with mana. The speed of my consciousness changed according to my wish. It was possible for me to even transform it into a body that didn't need to breathe if I wished. Whoever owned this body must be a formidable monster. Good. Time had slowed down. Marquis Bexioltu and Viscount Sun Hyuk-sin moved slowly as if they were stuck at 0.1x speed. My body also slowed down, but my consciousness continued to move at the same speed. I continued to think in a world with a more relaxed pace. Whether it's Chronicles of the Heavenly Demon or Tales of Somerwin Academy, those worlds could not have entered the tower on their own. They aren't humans like us. How were worlds brought into the tower? I thought hard. But I still couldn't imagine it. Seriously, how can a world be moved to the tower? I don't know if it's possible to make something like that. I frowned. Make something like that? My heart pounded. Right. Was there really a need to cram an entire world into the tower? Wasn't it enough to create the same world as Chronicles of the Heavenly Demon in the tower? In the first place, my memories are also stored in the tower. That means that there is a record of my time in the world in the tower. That could be it. It was much easier to imagine than physically cramming a world into the tower. However, there were still two problems that remained unresolved. Firstly, the Earthbone Dragon's box stored memories of the living. That's how it was explained in the skill. Regardless of whether a world was alive or dead, it felt a bit much to describe a world as living. There was no such thing as a world deciding to enter the tower of its own volition. Secondly, was none other than the Tower Master's personality. The Tower Master turned her head and looked at me, and there was a hint of playfulness in her bright smile. Purple eyes. It was a color too deep to reflect anything. When facing her, it was necessary to not focus too deeply on the color of her eyes, as even a pale white floor would lay bare in those jewel-like eyes. Her eyes seemed to devour mine like the open jaws of a snake. It was impossible. There was a fair bit of distance between our seats and the throne. But, nevertheless, I felt like
So,
Young was looking at me as if she were right in front of me. There is an interesting smell coming from here. In the distance,
So,
Young moved her lips, mouthing words. However, her words came right in front of me and drifted into my ears. Aura. I gulped down saliva. It was unclear how she realized that I'd changed the time of my consciousness to 0.1x, but
So,
Young sent her words out at exactly the same speed. The owner of this body was a wizard genius. But
So,
Young was a monster. What kind of interesting thing are you trying to show me, this one's advisor? This one's backstabbing staff? Baron Gu 1.
Ha!
One of this one's favorites, who can comfort this one's boring life just by staying still. Are you doing anything particularly interesting? I was thinking about the structure of the tower. Viscount. The subject's ego is defying. Continuing to reproduce the trauma. I tried to speak in the tone of Kim Gongja, but my tongue and lips moved against my will. I became a respectable noble and placed my hands in front of me. The structure of the tower? In the distance, Viscount
So,
Young tilted her head, still openly displaying her affection with His Majesty. Are you referring to the structure of the Platinum Tower?
Ah.
Well, the structure of this place is quite intriguing. It was used by the Dark Sovereign before the founding of the kingdom, so it was designed so that even when dragons passed. Not this tower. Huh? Is that so? Then is it the Tower of Appeal?
Ah.
Is it the Netherworld Tower asterisk that this one captured? Asterisk, changed from Yellow Sky Tower. I'm thinking about the structure of the tower that the Viscount will build. Suddenly,
So.
Jung rose up from her place under the throne. Viscount
So.
Jung? The king, who was sitting on the throne, was a bit surprised, so he looked at
So.
Jung. My apologies, Your Majesty. This one has something to discuss with my faction comrades. Alrighty. Take your time. Many thanks, Your Majesty. This one will count the seconds that I could not spend with you and keep it in my heart, so that I may return with a heart that is full of love. Viscount
So.
Jung turned away. Tap. Viscount
So.
Jung's dress was belted on both sides. The skirt was long and trailed behind her as she walked. She was not dressed as a noble or as duke, but only with the sense of the king's concubine. Viscount
So.
Jung had enough power and connections to wear such clothes in the sacred halls of the council without worry. Now then. Advisor Gu 1.
Ha!
The noble with the most power in this council hall where all nobles had gathered. She was my lord, I was her vassal. Where other nobles called me Baron, which was my official title in the kingdom, only Viscount
So.
Jung used advisor, which was my position in the family. If this one didn't hear incorrectly, I believe I heard the word tower just now.
Ah.
Marquis Beck Seol-tu and Viscount Sun Hyuk-sin, may I ask you to step aside for a moment?
Ah.
Yes. Viscount. Understood. Faction leader. Viscount
So.
Jung bent over and kissed Marquis Beck Seol-tu on the forehead. Marquis Beck Seol-tu blushed happily, and with a sprang up from her seat. Viscount
So.
Jung then lifted her left hand towards Viscount Sun Hyuk-sin. Viscount Sun Hyuk-sin, as if it was natural, knelt down and kissed and licked her left ring finger. Then she left her seat with a calm expression, seemingly satisfied. They are cute.
So.
Jung covered her lips with her sleeve and giggled. So, about the tower the advisor spoke about. As far as this one remembers, this one has never mentioned the tower to the advisor. I didn't tell anyone. That is why this one is a bit confused now. Do you perhaps have foresight? No. Viscount. I do not have foresight. That's what I thought. The only person in this kingdom with the ability to see the future is Sin Inyeji asterisk, who is training his compassion in the desert. If I don't have compassion, the world will end. He really said that to me with a straight face. Does that make sense, advisor? Is he just trying to get rid of this one? I listened to
So.
Jung's words with my hands politely clasped. The Viscount was originally very talkative, and once she started talking, the conversation would branch hundreds or thousands of times. In that case, it was better to just wait for the Viscount to return to the main point on her own. This body knew that.
Ah.
In any case, the tower. Like now. If not foresight, then is it mind reading? That would be harder than foresight. As the advisor should know, this one's mind is now protected by at least 4 layers of barriers. The place this one was thinking about the tower in is in the first layer, that is to say, this one's deepest part. I don't think even Jai knows. Jai, was the name of the boundary duke. TL, guess this is the final duke. There was only one person in the kingdom who could call the boundary duke's first name without hesitation, and that was Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung, who was right in front of me. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung was the only person who could say the boundary duke's real name without having her head sent flying. The boundary duke had the ability to read people's minds, so it was natural for her to have suspicions like, how did you know a plan that even the boundary duke couldn't read? Viscount. Yes, this one's advisor. Although this one calls you my advisor, you are this one's second advisor who wants to someday smash the head of your senior and become this one's only advisor. You should reverse your thinking. Ho! It's the opposite? I did not, already, foretell the tower. Viscount. The tower has already been completed, and, according to the logic of the tower, we are, belatedly, experiencing this situation now. Those purple eyes went wide. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung looked around, once to the left, then to the right. Then she tapped her lips with her index and middle fingers. Wow. That was all the time it took for the Viscount to organize her thoughts. Isn't that amazing? Let's check it out. Advisor, does that mean that you are from the future? If so, do you come from a future where this one has already built a tower and is running it successfully? That's right. However, that's impossible. Even if the tower is built, the advisor would never know of its existence. In this world, the only people who could know of the existence of the tower are the Gold Dragon, the Earthbone Dragon, the Ice River Dragon, and finally Viscount Simon Chow. Other than them, no one else would know. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung stroked her chin. Indeed. Then the tips of her lips curled into a smile. You are not Advisor Gu 1.
Ha!
Are you? You must be someone else, who has taken the image of Advisor Gu 1.
Ha! Ha!
Hoo-hoo. As expected, something did happen. How interesting. Yes. I am not this person. My name is Kim Gongja. You're not from this world, are you? This one can bet everything I have on that. Yes. That's right. I am a hunter from a tower called Ascension City. Hunter?
Ah.
I guess I settled for that name in the end. Ascension City. Is there a name attached to the outside world? I've heard constellations call it the Spire World. When she heard the words Spire World Jia.
So?
Jung's purple eyes narrowed slightly. That doesn't seem like a complete coincidence. Huh? It's nothing.
Ah.
I'm not saying that this one thinks it's nothing, I'm just saying it's nothing because I want to upset you. So that curiosity will control your left and right atriums and make your heart flutter. The heart is healthiest when it's pounding. You should be thankful that this one is granting you such health. I understood. This person talks a lot. It wasn't just a lot, it was even beginning to scratch my temper a bit. But how did a human from inside the tower come to the past? How fascinating. It's so unlikely that this one finds it hard to believe. This isn't the past. Viscount. Meow? This was new information. The tower master sometimes made cat noises. What a useless piece of information. This isn't the Viscount's world. It's not even my world. Then? This place is simply a dream recreation. The recreated memories of the Viscount. I'm in the Viscount's trauma. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung blinked. How? Because of my skill. If someone kills me, I can see their trauma. That's the skill. What do you know? That sounds like a pretty fun skill. If someone suggested creating such a skill, this one would welcome it with a straight face. Nevertheless, Kim Gongja. Doesn't being in this one's trauma mean that this one killed Kim Gongja? Slowly. Viscount Ja.
So?
Jung's head tilted to the left. That is almost impossible. Kim Gongja is a normal germ. Unless they become an evil god in the other world, this one would never kill anyone in the other world. Instead, this one would prefer to be killed by others. The Spire world. I said the name of the world where the director lived, where Kim Yul lived, and where the middle school student Ja.
So?
Jung lived. There is a person just like the Viscount in that place. I asked her to kill me. For no other reason than to meet you. Silence. Viscount Ja.
So?
Jung stared at me. She was completely expressionless. Then, humph, she snorted. She let out a breath, and finally, indeed, she nodded. How interesting. Viscount Ja.
So?
Jung reached out and touched my cheek. Considerably. Extremely. Interesting. Viscount Ja.
So?
Jung smiled brightly. So you reached this place by weaving a thread of error into a possibility, making use of both chance and coincidence. No. You probably didn't realize that you brought this one to this place. However, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. Kim Gongja, for you have achieved a miracle. Right. Today, it's this one's trauma. That's quite possible. The sound of Ja.
So?
Jung's breathing drew closer. So? The warrior who came through a miracle. What do you intend to do here? I want to know who you are. I gulped. The person who built the tower. I want to see what kind of person they are. I want to know what kind of life you lived. That's why I came this far. Hoo-hoo. Viscount Ja.
So?
Jung's eyes lit up. Cute. And she slowly let go of my cheek. Fine. Please, until you are satisfied, look at the kind of person this one is. It just so happens that the person you possessed is Advisor Gu-won.
Ha!
This one's advisor. It is Advisor Gu-won.
Ha!
S-roll to follow this one at all times, in any place, so you won't be suspected if you stay with this one. Viscount Ja.
So?
Jung turned to me. Now then. Follow me, Mr. Kim Gongja. And held out her hand. This one will introduce you to my world. Chapter 216. Someone's Lord, 3. This was where the trauma would be reenacted. Viscount Ja.
So?
Jung, who was walking in front of my eyes, was like a character in a dream, so to speak. I've experienced quite a few nightmares, but Ja.
So?
Jung was the first person to be aware that she was a character in a trauma. Don't you feel strange or upset? Huh? Well, that means that you don't really exist. This is a trauma created by my skill. Not really. The only thing this one feels strange about is the fact Kim Gongja is speaking in your own way with Advisor Gu-won.
Ha!
S face and voice. That is strange. Viscount Ja.
So?
Jung giggled. Is Kim Gongja a man or a woman? Considering the naming conventions of the Spire world, I think you might be a man.
Ah.
Yes. I'm a man. As expected. Then, as a present, I will give you a mirror. With a soft yap, Viscount Ja.
So?
Jung took a hand mirror out of her bosom. And aimed it to my face. On the surface of the mirror, I saw the reflection of the person I was possessing, Baron Gu-won.
Ha!
How is it? Not half bad, right? I know. Naturally, it looks good. After all, it's this one's advisor. Viscount Ja.
So?
Jung muttered jokingly. However, Baron Guwon.
Ha!
S face was no joke. Beautiful. Dark hair that was around shoulder length. Even in the light, the hair didn't shine with oil. It was just black. As if it would not let any light through, Baron Guwon.
Ha!
S short hair was pure black. Wah. In contrast to the dark hair, the skin was white. There was the expression, face as white as blank paper, but this person seemed to be covered in white sheets. It was a person with only two shades, black and white. Amazing. How does it feel to become a woman, Kim Gongja? Does it make your heart pound? This one would like you to surprise me with the cliché of saying, I really became a girl, while holding your breasts with both hands. Why did I possess this body? I tried to cast information magic on myself. Soon, Baron Guwon.
Ha!
S description appeared. Guwon.
Ha!
Identity, noble. Baron. Relationship, Ja.
So?
Jung's advisor. Danger rating, black. Remarks, head of the Guwon Baron family. When she was young, her uncle, the family head of the previous generation, participated in the War of Black and White and was accused of rebellion. Her father, the next family head, associated with heretics and was purged together with them when the purging took place. As all of the elders of her family were dead, Guwon.
Ha!
Had no choice but to take over as family head. It was an era of rebellions and purges. During this period, Marquis Si Bangpei approached. He asked her to take care of the child of a rebel leader. Baron Guwon.
Ha!
Accepted the rebel leader's daughter and raised her as her daughter without knowing. The daughter secretly organized an army with Marquis Si Bangpei. When this army was discovered, the kingdom issued a suppression order and swept it away. Marquis Si Bangpei was executed because of this. Baron Guwon.
Ha!
Was deposed and demoted to the status of free citizen. Although she was a fourth circle wizard, she was also expelled from the magic tower. She was kidnapped by the terrorist organization Red Nails off the street when she had nothing. Afterward, she was imprisoned and abused in the Red Nails for more than 9 years. Then, she met the Viscount. Strengths, level-headed judgment, power of execution, second stage ascendant. Weaknesses, successor of rebels, rebel origins, rebel associate, family of rebels, Viscount Ja.
So?
Jung, daughter. This person had also lived a turbulent life. She was originally from a noble family, but 3 people were involved in rebellion.
Ah.
You must be looking at the information book that the advisor made. Yes, that's right. Uncle, father, daughter. All 3 of them were involved in a rebellion. It's funny that they were all different revolts, but do you know what's funnier? What? Does the information say the advisor has a daughter? Originally, she was the daughter of a rebel leader, but she was forced to accept her at Marquis Si Bangpei's request. That child eventually grew up to lead a rebel army. The fuck? The expression, House of Dogs fits perfectly in this situation. I've never heard of a family like that before. It's like the entire family has a rebel fetish. If her father was a rebel, her daughter was a rebel, and even she herself was involved in a rebellion, how can she still keep her noble status? Are you surprised? It doesn't make sense. Oh. Kim Gongja, there are only 2 people in the world who think what doesn't make sense makes sense. 1, are fools, and 2, are the powerful. Because this one is powerful, I could offer a noble title to Viscount Ja.
So?
Jung. Understand? Asterisk, Konglish. Viscount, you can speak English. Yes. I can roughly speak German, English, French, Korean, and Japanese. In the outside world, the custom of going to another world is a trend, isn't it? Conversely, in this world, the trend is to accept people from other worlds. I learned a few languages from foreign tutors. Oh. Then French and English people are living in this world? No. Snap. Viscount jaw.
So?
Jung closed her hand mirror. At the same time, the letters fluttering in front of my eyes disappeared. They're all dead. Except for one. The moment you have fun and jump on the trend saying, I'm going to adventure in another world, you realize that whichever world you go to is still a world, and death is still death. Outsiders from another world. If that is known, they will be imprisoned or killed, wouldn't they? There are so many things that this one has to protect. Well, let's stop talking about the dark stuff. Yap. Instead of putting her hand mirror away, Viscount jaw.
So?
Jung took out a cup instead. Where did it come from? I couldn't help but wonder what were the laws of physics of the space in Viscount jaw.
So?
Jung's bosom. Kim Gongja, please spread your arms for a moment. I would like to look at your body. L dash, like this? Yes. Now, this isn't a regular cup, but a cup made out of medicinal stone. That's why it can do something like this. For some reason, Viscount jaw.
So?
Jung pushed the cup into my body. Puk. The cup went into me. Ha. Ha. Viscount jaw.
So?
Jung's cup stirred around inside me. After a while, Viscount jaw.
So?
Jung pulled the cup out, and it was filled with water. How is it? Don't you feel refreshed? This. What is this? By the way, it's incredibly delicious. This water. It's so refreshing that I could slap myself on the cheeks. Viscount jaw.
So?
Jung drank the water that came out of my body. Oh my God. My brain was broken by the incomprehensible scene that I witnessed. Puhaha, how cool. This is why this one couldn't help but bring the advisor. Advisor Gu 1.
Ha!
Is an ascendant. Ascendant. In this world, there is something called the law of ascension. Whoever can overcome the trial, can become a human who can do a bit more. More importantly, they receive the grace that, if they die once, they won't die. If they die once, they won't die. What does that mean? Literally that. If an ascendant dies, they get smaller. If they die one more time in that state, then they will really die. There will be no more miracles, and they will die like a normal person. However, to the kingdom's surprise, there is ascension beyond ascension. A sky beyond the sky. There are only a few people who have stepped into the second sky. Viscount jaw.
So?
Jung grabbed my hand in a playful manner. And that's you, Baron Gu 1.
Ha!
In this vast world, you are Baron Gu 1.
Ha!
A second stage ascendant wizard, the number of which doesn't exceed 12. I understand that she is a great human. But why, when you push a cup into my body, water flows out? Second stage ascendants gradually escape the limits of humanity. You can even say that they are closer to divine beings. For example, this one's first advisor has a core of fire, so if he wanted to, he could burn an entire city like a phoenix. On the other hand, this one's second advisor's core is water. It is also very clean and very cool water. Jaw.
So?
June patted my cheek with her index finger as she continued. The two staffs that support this one are fire and water. Wasn't this one born with a blessed life? Ja.
So.
Jung rubbed water from her fingertips onto her lips. My water dripped from her pink lips, making them glossy. This one's personal lip balm. This one's personal washroom. This one's personal sink. Baron Gu 1.
Ha!
Followed this one so that this one could keep my fresh scent as if I always just stepped out of water. Unfortunately, this one won't be able to use the bathtub today. Because of Kim Gongja. That's right. I definitely understood. Baron Gu 1.
Ha!
Is Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung's vassal, advisor, and a second-stage ascendant of which there were no more than 12 in the world. Although she was a member of a vicious family that rebelled against the kingdom for 4 generations. Gu 1.
Ha!
Loved Ja.
So.
Jung. The water that makes up my body is only used to please and comfort Ja.
So.
Jung. In other words, the owner of Baron Gu 1.
Ha!
Was Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung. I wasn't sure if that was a good or bad thing for Gu 1.
Ha!
But there were countless other people who served Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung as their master. As soon as we entered the lounge, a large crowd of nobles, and servants who served nobles, came to us. Your Excellency, Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung. About the votes in favor of the last agenda. How can the royal family do this when the situation is already so difficult for Baron C? No. By your order, we have secured a large amount of meat in cooperation with the royal palace. You said it wouldn't matter if the meat was spoiled, so there was no difficulty in securing the right quantity. Your Excellency, where should we chatter? The group chattered as if everything that happened in the world required the input of Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung. Ja.
So.
Jung responded with a small smile. Yes, this one is here. We will not just send a new lord to Baron C. No. The kingdom is deeply interested in the territory and the empty areas around it. Support will be provided at the top level, so there is no need to worry too much. Well done. Move the meat straight to the royal family as it is. Don't take it inside, instead, keep it in a nearby place, so that you can bring it to the conference hall at any time. This one has already told you what to do. If you go there, the royal courtiers and attendants will assist you. All of the petitioners said thank you or I'm sorry, and then ran elsewhere. Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung is busy saving the kingdom today again. Amazing. Anyone seeing this would think you are a duke, not a viscount. You care so much about people with a compassionate heart. Your Excellency Count. Ru Ho. Before I knew it, Viscount Sun Hyuk-sin was back in the lounge. Dozens of nobles sat down around Viscount Sun Hyuk-sin and drank tea. They were Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung's faction. No matter what anyone says, Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung is the noble who has attained the most splendid achievements this year. She deserves the compensation and treatment that goes with that. In a war zone, the person who kills the best is the best. Don't nobles know even that?
Ha!
Since the leader is shallow, those below are shallow as well. How dare you interrupt the Count's words when he is talking to Viscount Ja?
So.
Jung? What? Do you want to duel? Is that it? I checked the information of everyone in Ja.
So.
Jung's faction that opened their mouths. I waited around for 13 hours in that meeting room. 13 hours. You're tired, I'm tired, we're all tired, so why are you aiming for our party leader who's having an even harder time? Do you want to get hit? Day.
Ha!
Ran. Identity, noble. Viscount. Relationship, Ja.
So.
Jung's disciple. Danger rating, white. Remarks, former Platinum General of the Royal Army. 60 years ago, when a major rebellion broke out, they led the army to suppress the rebels. At that time, the death toll was 60,000. When the civilian deaths were included, the number reached as high as 210,000. However, when it was discovered that the rebellion was actually contrived by the royal family, the royal army was disbanded, and Day Ran became unemployed. Day Ran argued that it wouldn't make sense that there wasn't a royal army in the kingdom, and that if the security of the kingdom was left solely to the armies of nobles, only doom would await. Viscount Ja Young accepted Day Ran as her youngest disciple, but he is suffering because he cannot understand her words. Ally. Can kill. Strengths, survival, martial arts, combat, warfare. Weaknesses, butcher, plunderer, impatient, stupid apart from warfare. Notes, scavenging off of Marquis Beck Seal 2. And I slowly started to notice. What, you want to hit me? Come on then, fish egg bastard. Today I will teach you bastards. Wait. Isn't everyone too hot-headed? With a sharp sound, a gentle-looking noble ripped a musical instrument apart. Today is the first day in 60 years that His Majesty has personally attended a council meeting. If it is known that nobles dueled in the lounge on this day, what would that do to His Majesty's honor? Even if you don't care about that, Ja Young will be sad. Hey Myeongsum. Identity, noble. Baron. Relationship, Ja Young's associate. Danger rating, blue. Remark, former master of Ocean Sound Gate. Ocean Sound Gate was an elite group with very few members. They mainly carried out special operations like assassination, base destruction, arson, and farm poisoning, and had a high reputation backed by outstanding performance. They were one of the 6 major mercenary groups in the kingdom, called the 6 Heavenly Gates, in the past. When Viscount Ja Young devoured the 6 Heavenly Gates, he followed her and was made a baron. Ally. Can kill. Strengths, survival, speed, defends without fail, ascendant. Weaknesses, arsonist, poisoner, wanderlust. Notes, starting to regard Viscount Ja Young as a special person. After gathering so much information, it was hard not to see the common point of all the people who loved Ja Young as their master. Every person who spoke in the lounge, regardless of their different appearances, lives or personalities, had a strong unerasable red line. I'm a rookie who only received my Baron title today, so if you want to fight, send me instead. The rumors will end as a bunch of newcomers being rude to each other. Baron Gu Seju. The Viscount's slave. He became the right hand of the rebel leader and directly killed and tortured hundreds of people. Is it really necessary to fight? I think the reason Count Ruho is like that is because he feels that he can't do anything and is getting pushed back by teacher. So if he just accepts the loss, it won't be a problem. I heard you are very loyal to the king, so wouldn't it be better to let teacher and the king win? Former Viscount say. GWI. The Viscount's disciple. Like Viscount Sun Hyuk-sin, he had also been captured by the Red Nails. At that time, he also learned the ritual of darkness and continued the ritual even after safely arriving at the capital. Together with his nobles, he ate thousands of people. Even the young Marquis Beck Seal-tu had a criminal record of whipping a commoner child to death. Kim Gongja? Viscount Ja Young, who had been watching the war of words between factions, turned towards me. Despite having to deal with numerous complaints on the spot, she showed no signs of exhaustion. Instead, she was smiling brightly. No. I should call you Advisor Gu1.
Ha!
Right. Advisor Gu1.
Ha!
Is there something strange on this one's face? Or perhaps, in other words, everyone who loved Ja
So.
Young. Have you learned what you wish? Murder. Or butcher. Do you know a little bit about this one now? Chapter 217. Golden Rule 1. Why? I couldn't help but ask. Why did you only gather people like this and make them your lovers? Tower Master Ja
So.
Young. She would one day build a tower that gathered all of the abandoned people from all over the world. Children who were made victims by religious fanatics, warriors forced to die by unreasonable disasters, women whose lives were ruined by mysterious circumstances. All of those whose lives were abandoned or ruined were gathered and brought to a new world. The person who built the tower for the victims. Why did such a person take murderers as lovers? I looked questioningly at Viscount Ja
So.
Young. People like this. Viscount Ja
So.
Young smiled. Who exactly are you talking about, Advisor? People who have committed great sins. Those who beat children to death with whips, or who took humans as meat and ate them. Those who went to war and killed many civilians. Why do you love people like that? Why do you still let them be nobles? You are the one who will build the tower in the future. A nigh omnipotent being. And yet, you don't punish them. Advisor. Viscount Ja
So.
Young suddenly spoke. Is a very nice person. Huh? Those who climb the tower together with the advisor must be very happy. I tilted my head as if to say, what do you mean? But Viscount Ja
So.
Young didn't explain. Instead, she simply sat on a chair and looked ahead. I, too, was drawn by her gaze and looked at the sight in front of us. It is ridiculous for someone who isn't even 20 yet to become a duke. A heated discussion was currently ongoing in the lounge. It was a noble from the conservative faction. I think he was called Count Ru Ho. This noble, whose hair flowed wildly like a lion's mane, was enraged. Viscount Ja
So.
Young is 18 years old. 18. No matter how many rebellions she has quelled or how many dragon kingdoms she conquered, there is order in this kingdom. Indeed. Who dash? This time, it was a noble from Viscount Ja
So.
Young's faction, who was holding a hookah. The Count is right. I didn't understand why, over the past few decades, the rebels, instead of being subjugated, grew stronger and stronger. Listening to your words today has opened my eyes. While an 18-year-old fought fierce battles with sweat and blood, the great nobles, like the Count, upheld the laws of propriety. I understand now that it's thanks to you all that the kingdom remained prosperous and was not destroyed. Laughter flowed from every direction. In addition to the comrade who'd just spoken, the nobles of Viscount Ja
So.
Young's faction jeered at them. Seriously. I used to blame myself for leaving all of our burdens to a young girl, but now I see that she deserves to be punished for daring to build an army at such a young age. That's right. If our party leader didn't step forward, there probably would have been another 200,000 casualties in this time's Gold Dragon subjugation. No, if the red nails hadn't been eradicated, millions would still be groaning in pain. However, what does that matter? Even if she saved hundreds of thousands of soldiers and ensured the safety of millions of civilians, that child is only 18 years old. It would be ridiculous to make her a duke. Exactly. The virtue of Count Ru Ho, who cares about the kingdom's laws so much, is truly beautiful. The nobles were bombarded by wave after wave of verbal attacks. They were all Viscount Ja
So.
Jung's lovers. The child killer, Marquis Bexeolto, looked around with a cautious expression. The eater of human flesh, Viscount Sun Hyuk-sin, backed up her comrades. The butcher, Day.
Ha!
Ran giggled openly. Their reactions were all different, but they had gathered in one place for Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung.
Ha!
Count. Ru, whose expression became distorted. It was disgraceful to be pushed around so much in a debate. The Count muttered out loud. The courtesan's dogs. You're all quite good at barking. At those words, the lounge became silent. The expressions of the nobles who had all been mocking the Count before, became cold simultaneously. Their smiles disappeared from their faces. But despite their expressionlessness, their eyes burned with rage. What do you think, Kim Gongja? Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung whispered. It was a voice so low that only I could hear it. Isn't it interesting? As Kim Gongja said, all of those who side with this one are murderers. Butchers. Sinners. But look. Look at their faces now. Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung lifted her butt and leaned over towards me. They are suffering. Her lips came closer as she whispered. Just because this one was cursed as a courtesan. That's not exactly wrong. This one has enticed many nobles and even royalty with music, dance, and sweet nothings. It wouldn't be a lie to say that this one used all kinds of art to captivate people. In other words, a courtesan. In fact, Count. Ruho still restrained himself. On the streets, they publicly call this one a whore. 0. Kook. Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung pulled on my sleeves. Look. Kim Gongja. I was forced to bend by the influence of gravity. As my face came level with her shoulders, Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung whispered in my ear. The person who killed a child with a whip, the noble who eats humans, the general who slaughtered civilians, they are all suffering like that just because this one was called a courtesan. It's really interesting. Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung whispered in my ear as she wrapped her arm around my right arm. It was like a snake coiling around a trunk. There are hundreds of law books in the kingdom. According to those prescribed laws, the sins of the sinners must be calculated and their errors measured so that their responsibility can be derived. It is annoying, but it is easy. If this one wishes, I could have all of the sinners executed immediately. So what should I do, Kim Gongja? Should I kill them all? That? Yes. The snake smiled. Beneath long eyelashes, the snake's purple eyes glistened. Aren't you thinking, that's a bit harsh? As far as this one can see, Kim Gongja is such a person. A good person. From the moment you thought that executing those who have done wrong is harsh, Kim Gongja was already completely different from this one. What do you mean? Killing them wouldn't be such a bad thing. Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung grabbed my cheeks and forcefully turned my gaze. Our eyes locked onto a noble with white hair like a rabbit. It was Marquis Bexeolto, who was looking at the people of both factions with a flustered expression. Marquis Bexeolto murdered a minor when she was a minor. The Marquis family delivered settlement money to the bereaved family. On one side was one of the great noble families of the royal capital. On the other side was a normal commoner family of 3. While it was called settlement money, wasn't it really an ultimatum? That was probably true. The criminal at that time was a minor. There was also the fact that the victim's bereaved family had come to an agreement with the nobles. In that case, Marquis Bexeolto would have been sentenced to. What do you think? No matter how hard she's hit, would it really be that bad? Tada. That's the punishment by the law. Viscount Jia,
So?
Jung said playfully. On the other hand, the bereaved family was ruined. Unlike noble families, commoner families are easily destroyed. That family. A granddaughter, grandfather and grandmother lived together. The granddaughter, who was killed by Marquis Beck-Seoltu, was the only descendant. Their only granddaughter had died. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung continued to whisper in my ear. Do you see, Kim Gongja? That family was ruined. Broken. Destroyed. What was the point of receiving billions in settlement money? Could they put that child's body back together with gold? If, under the laws of this great and dignified kingdom, under the dignity of the good and fair presiding judge, Marquis Beck-Seoltu was miraculously deposed, would the bereaved family feel better? The sinner who ruined my life and the life of my family. Even if I kill that sinner, my resentment wouldn't go away. Think about it. What if your granddaughter died? On one winter day, in the middle of a snowy white field, a noble's whip cut her back and broke her spine, and she died. Would you accept that death? Then, what should I do? I understood what the Viscount was saying. That was in line with the worries I'd had when taking my revenge. Those who had already sinned. And those who had been victimized by them. What could I do to repay those broken lives? Even a saint like the Black Dragon Master had the blood of countless beings on her hands. I was close friends with the Black Dragon Master. And I had yet to come to a conclusion as to whether what she had done was right, and what I should do if it wasn't. Pain. The owner of the tower answered. Pain is the only answer. She stroked the side of my hair. The pain of losing your only granddaughter. The pain of the past 6 years that you had to live with after your granddaughter disappeared. The pain of never seeing your granddaughter again for the rest of your life. To return all of that pain, the exact same pain, to the sinner. That is the law that is needed in this world, and that's what this one wants to do in this kingdom. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung spoke like a senior giving advice to their treasured junior. However, her eyes. Regardless of how gentle their gaze was, those purple eyes seemed to have a magical power that made them shine with the evil of youth. That's why Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung seemed both like a senior who cared about her junior, and a demon seducing an innocent at the same time. This one will refound this kingdom under the law of pain. Not only this kingdom, but this entire world. Every creation that this one's feet walks over, and this one's eyes shine upon. The tower is a tool to accomplish that. I was speechless for a moment. Is such a thing possible? There are 2 ways to make the impossible possible. One is to go crazy. If you're crazy, then you can make the impossible possible in your daydreams. What's the other one? Gaining power. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung giggled. Power is a possession. It dominates. This one bewitched the 6 dukes, seduced his majesty, and captured 3 dragon emperors. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung raised a finger. Just to become the most powerful person in the world. Tuck. Tuck. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung tapped the arm of her chair twice. The nobles of Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung's faction turned to look at the same place as one. The people who were staring coldly at Count Ruho stopped what they were doing and what they were going to say as soon as they heard the tuk-tuk sounds. They turned their heads at the signal from their master. The same was true for the opposing faction. At first, they kept talking, but when they say their opponents look away at the same time, they couldn't help but feel strange. Thus, the nobles on the other side also looked at Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung. When all the nobles turned to look in one place, the servants who were serving the alcohol, and the musicians who played the music, also turned to look at Viscount Ja.
So
Young. 13 seconds. That is how long hundreds of people in the spacious lounge looked at Viscount Ja.
So
Young. The fierce shouts, clever sarcasm, and cold anger stopped for a moment. The entire room went still. My dear noble colleagues. Under the gazes of hundreds, Viscount Ja.
So
Young opened her lips. You all should have come to this lounge to rest, but as I see you all arguing so hard here, I can't help but feel proud to be a member of this kingdom. I just hope the council will pay you overtime. After all, you must be working overtime in this place because you don't have enough money. Using my shoulder as a brace, Viscount Ja.
So
Young got to her feet. That was enough rest. So let's go back to the meeting hall and resume the main business. At the same time, the nobles of Viscount Ja.
So
Young's faction jumped to their feet. As they got up, they left many empty glasses, not so empty glasses, and glasses that hadn't even been put to their lips in their place. Without any hesitation, the nobles all gathered around Ja.
So
Young. Considering the fact that each of them was a powerful person that was incomparable to commoners, it was a truly bizarre scene. Now, in the middle of this strange scene, Viscount Ja.
So
Young grabbed my wrist. Kim Gongja. Tonight, this one will show you a miracle. Ja.
So
Young was smiling brightly. Chapter 218. Golden Rule 2. We walked into the meeting room. Tap tap. Every step Viscount Ja.
So
Young made was followed by the steps of dozens of nobles. Only the sounds of footsteps could be heard as no one spoke. Like elite soldiers heading towards the final battle. The moment we entered the meeting hall, I lost my breath. The nobles from other factions, who were already there, looked over to us. Angry glares. Jealous glares. And glares filled with envy and yearning. Hello, everyone. I believe the meeting is about to resume. Viscount Ja.
So
Young smiled in a relaxed manner. This one's faction members have come. Are we too late? Silence. No one answered. But Viscount Ja.
So
Young didn't seem to expect an answer in the first place. With a smile on her face, Viscount Ja.
So
Young went to her seat. What are you doing, advisor? As I turned to leave, Viscount Ja.
So
Young called out to me. Ha! The advisor's seat is right beside this one. Come along quickly. Surely you don't intend to leave this one alone. She is being considerate since my memories are unclear. I nodded and quietly followed Viscount Ja.
So
Young. It was only as I walked towards the seat that I got a good look of the meeting hall. It was very different from the National Assembly image that I knew. Firstly, instead of a semicircle, it was a complete circle. It reminded me of a coliseum. A throne was placed in the middle like a pillar, and the seats of the noble council members surrounded it. There was a part that was even stranger. Water? That's right. There was flowing water. A water channel had been installed beneath the seat. If I sat down, my feet would naturally be submerged in water. The water channels spread out like a web throughout the council hall, and they all flowed down to a drain beneath the throne. It's amniotic fluid. Asa star dot. Asterisk, something like a soft exclamation of pleasure. I couldn't think of a good English equivalent in this case. Viscount Ja.
So
Young took off her shoes and sat down. Looking around, I saw other nobles also taking off their shoes as if they were used to it. Amniotic fluid? Yes. Amniotic fluid. There is a large lake beneath the royal capital. Water is drawn from the lake and connected to the waterways throughout the city, but first, the water passes through this place. The Platinum Tower's meeting hall. I followed the others and took off my shoes. What is the meaning of this? It has many meanings. And also many uses. The council makes laws in this hall, and the laws make the kingdom. This is where the kingdom is born from. Always be aware that we are giving birth to a kingdom. That is why it's called amniotic fluid. I also took off my socks before putting my feet in the water channel. Trickle, the warm water drifted between my toes. It's warm. Yes, because it's winter now. It's cool in the summer. It serves as a temperature control for this large conference room. Amazing. The color and temperature of the water also changes depending on the importance of the agenda. For example, if the council decides to invade a dragon kingdom, the amniotic fluid will become red like blood. The waterways throughout the city will also become red. This serves to tell the populace that there is an emergency. In other words, the water the populace uses in their everyday life had to first run across the feet of the nobles. It seems to give some kind of fetish satisfaction to the nobles and subjects. Isn't it really practical in many ways? No. That was a bit. Seeing my disgusted expression, Viscount Jia.
So.
Jung snickered. Kim Gongja. You're not being the advisor at all. Huh? This one's advisor would never make that kind of expression. It would be interesting if Kim Gongja's identity is revealed, but this meeting is more important for now. I'd appreciate it if you were careful so that other people didn't notice. The manner of speech of the person called Guwon.
Ha!
What was it like? Huh? You don't remember? Yes, the memories are faint. I feel like this is my first time seeing the amniotic fluid. Jia.
So?
Jung glanced at me from the side. Well, it's simple. Generally polite. Usually expressionless. If you act indifferent and speak in a stiff manner, that's Advisor Guwon. S tone. I furrowed my brows slightly. Like this? It's fine. But it's not perfect. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung held her chin as she looked at me. It would be better if you could make your face a bit more expressionless. This one's advisor didn't really value the world. Didn't value the world. Yes. Regardless of whether it's a person, the public or the kingdom. The only people that matter to the advisor are this one and her daughter. Everything else is meaningless background noise. All of a sudden, I remembered the information spell that the original owner of this body had created. What she'd written about Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung. Plus. My lord. My heart. My blood. My everything in this world. Plus. Ba-bump. As I recalled those words, my heart thumped loudly for some reason. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung looked at me with an interested expression. Your facial expressions are pretty good. Have you learned acting before? I have. I had the chance to act in a play while climbing the tower. You are quite versatile, Kim Gongja. Right now, you're very much like Advisor Guwon.
Ha!
Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung grew wider. Is it okay for me to call you Advisor instead of Kim Gongja from now on? Why? Was my heart pounding again? Even though I was just making eye contact with Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung, my heart felt stuffy. Just like when I'd first entered this world, fog formed in my head. Fortunately, a voice called for attention just as I was about to be enveloped in fog. Presenting His Majesty the King. The meeting resumed. As soon as the meeting began, the nobles from the other factions began to bombard Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung. The first person to open the floodgates was Count Ruho, who had been holding it in since they were in the lounge. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung privately accepted rebels as her subordinates. Not just the Red Nails. The Stone Assembly, Half-Stones, Heavenly Gods, Hearts. All of the rebel groups that caused disturbances in the recent years have become Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung's subordinates. I do not recommend that such a noble be made into a duke. Hundreds of nobles turned to Count Ruho. The king of the kingdom accepted the count's remarks without comment. It felt like this was more of a hearing for Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung than a meeting. Even now, we should bring the traitors hiding under Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung's and punish them according to their crimes. If the Viscount is loyal to the kingdom, she will cooperate. Is that not so, Viscount? Why would you hide traitors if not to rebel? Count. All of the people that this one accepted were captured by this one. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung responded with a smile. Every prisoner captured on the battlefield belongs to the general. What is wrong with this one doing as I like with my belongings? Even if they are traitors who pointed their swords towards the kingdom? There is nothing wrong with that. An excellent warrior's sword has tasted the blood of thousands of people. But no one blames the sword. It is the warrior's fault. This one simply collected a few bloody swords. Are you now saying that these living people are objects? Yes. They are this one's property. If the count wanted to do things to them, then you should have captured them. Or you can abolish slavery. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung blinked slowly, naturally. Aren't there a large number of slaves in Count Ruho's county? It's a pity that the territory's finances rely heavily on the slave economy. I'd advise you begin to renovate your territory's economy immediately. How dare you talk about accounts management? It's the same. The prisoners this one captured are also this one's private property. I don't know what right the count has that lets you interfere with this one's family affairs. Wouldn't it be better for the count and this one to draw the line there? Count Ruho asked. What if it was a crime committed not by your property, but a living subordinate, Viscount Jia?
So?
Jung? Your Majesty. Count Ruho turned to the throne. There is something I'd like to tell your Majesty. Go ahead. The birth of a new duke is a serious, without precedent in the 2,000-year history of our kingdom. Since strict procedures are required, I believe it is essential to verify the moral quality of the duke candidate. The Sun King quietly listened to the count. He had not left the palace in 60 years. Those who didn't work for success, and those who did not succeed had no authority. The Sun King had no authority. And the nobles didn't respect those without authority. I have received some very questionable reports about Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung's moral character. Therefore, if your Majesty grants me leave, I would like to bring a few witnesses here. The Sun King turned his head to look at Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung. His eyes seemed to ask what she wanted. Jia.
So?
Jung simply smiled as if she was not worried. Go ahead. Thank you, Your Majesty. The prepared witnesses entered the council hall one after the other. The first person to set foot in the amniotic fluid was a neat-looking old man. Count Ruho asked the old man. What is the name of the witness? My name is Nam Suk. What is the identity and origin of the witness? I am a free citizen. 41 years ago, I came to the royal capital from Baron Sa Josung's territory and settled here. Nam Suk. To come here as a free citizen, the royal grace bestowed upon you was by no means light. The old man knelt and pressed his forehead to the ground. This unworthy one is eternally grateful for your grace. This is an appeal for the nobles who have treated you unfairly. My world felt like it collapsed when I lost my granddaughter, who was my only descendant. That is why this unworthy one dares to dirty your precious eyes and ears. Upon hearing that, I turned my head. In the seat next to me, Marquis Bexiolto's face turned blue. It is truly unfortunate that you lost your granddaughter. But the loss of human life is a matter that's determined by the heavens. You are not the only one who lost a family member. What is so unfair that you decided to make an appeal here? The death of lowly people is as natural as cutting weeds, but this unworthy one's granddaughter was not taken by the heavens. Oh. Count. Ruho pretended to be a merciful lord. How did your granddaughter die? My granddaughter was whipped to death by someone called Bexiolto. A murmur rippled in the amniotic fluid. Bexiolto? That is a familiar name. Do you perhaps know the identity of that person? When my granddaughter died 6 years ago, I only heard that it was done by young Lady Bexiolto. If it's Bexiolto, it should be the Marquis sitting there right now. The nobles turned to look at Bexiolto. The Marquis was not only blue in the face, she was also shaking. Marquis. Yes. This person is saying that his granddaughter was killed by the Marquis 6 years ago. Is that correct? That. I. At that moment, Viscount Ja Jung stood up. As the Viscount got up, the water splashed under her feet. Your Majesty. Speak. Marquis Bexiolto's family is under this one's protection. Since this one is the main gate of the family, the Marquis would be the side gate. As such, this one should be reprimanded instead of my subordinates. I'm saying that it's not right for Count Ruho to question this one's subordinates. What do you think, Count? Viscount Ja Jung has a good heart. I would also like to question Viscount Ja Jung instead of Marquis Bexiolto. Count Ruho had a triumphant expression as though that was what he wanted. Viscount. Yes, Count. Did you know what the Marquis had done? I did. A murmur rippled through the amniotic fluid once again. Since when did you know? I already knew what Marquis Bexiolto did before making her a subordinate. The Marquis directly confessed to this one. No. Does that mean that you accepted the Marquis despite knowing her sins? That is correct. Bang. Count. Ruho slammed his hand on the table. Why? The Marquis whipped a child to death. How could you accept such a cruel noble? Viscount Ja Jung smiled. Looking at that smile made me uneasy. I'm not sure if you know. At that time, the Marquis family's young miss was known for her recklessness. Retarded young miss, stupid young miss, brainless young miss. She heard sarcastic remarks like this every day. After meeting the Marquis, this one decided to raise her properly. Raise her properly? The young miss grew up in an abusive family. Bexiolto flinched, her shoulders shaking. Marquis Bexiolto's grandfather, Marquis Bekmitu, was a genius. But he was a genius in a bad way. He couldn't understand people who weren't as smart as him, and he couldn't understand his granddaughter who wasn't smarter than him. rebukes, verbal abuse, physical abuse. Marquis Bexioltu's childhood was tainted by her grandfather's evil disregard. Count. Ruho furrowed his eyebrows. So? Are you saying Marquis Bexioltu should be forgiven because she's pitiful? No. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung covered her mouth with her sleeve as she smiled. If I had left her alone, Marquis Bexioltu would have continued being the brainless young miss forever. She would have also died peacefully at the hands of assassins sent by someone without a chance to repent for her sins. This one doesn't think that's right. What are you talking about? This one took Marquis Bexioltu on a trip for a month. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung hummed. It felt like she was reminiscing about a pleasant memory. I showed the young miss, who had never done anything for herself, what the reality of life was. I forced her to experience the lives of those who couldn't eat if they didn't work, and I forced her to understand the reality of the outside world where it was difficult to eat even if you work hard. Thanks to this, Marquis Bexioltu was able to understand, even if she is unhappy, it is still tolerable misfortune. Then this one regularly gave the young miss classes. Sometimes we went to the northern port to take a look at the lives of merchants, and sometimes I took her to subjugate bandits. Like this, I showed her how the lives of people could be ruined. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung breathed heavily. Almost as if she was intoxicated, Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung spoke in a low, breathy voice. Did you know? Marquis Bexioltu is still 15 years old. Although she is only 15, she had already experienced the deaths of ordinary people, the deaths of merchants, and the deaths of bandits. I dare say that Marquis Bexioltu will surely become one of the greatest lords in the kingdom.
Ha!
Count.
Ah.
Ruho laughed. I was wondering what you were talking about. So you're trying to cover up her past stains by claiming she would be a great politician in the future. Viscount, such a rotten spirit. You really don't know anything, Count. What? What matters isn't whether she becomes a good politician or not. The point is, despite being such a good noble, she will have a mistake that can never be undone in her past. Jia.
So?
Jung's breath became hot. Don't you get it? That means the better Marquis Bexioltu becomes, the unhappier she will be. No matter what she chooses to do, no matter how many people she saves, Marquis Bexioltu will never be able to consider herself a good person. This is natural, since she'll never be able to change the fact that she killed a child. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung clasped her hands together. As if she was saying a prayer. This one will raise Marquis Bexioltu to be the greatest noble in this kingdom. And I will also make her grow up to be the unhappiest noble in the kingdom. As the days pass, misfortune will dye the Marquis. The combination of self-blame and shame will surely paint the Marquis face. Count. Imagine the Marquis like that. Imagine how unhappiness will be clear in her every gesture, her past continuously dragged behind in her shadow. What do you think? Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung smiled brightly like a saint. Isn't it lovely? Chapter 219. Golden Rule 3. The room became silent. Many nobles were shaken by the words of Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung. Lovely. Count.
Ah.
Ruho looked caught off guard. Many nobles had similar expressions. However, those who had been captured directly by Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung. Only the expressions of those who loved the Viscount and were loved by the Viscount didn't change. It was almost as if the Viscount's lovers thought something that should be said is being said. Yes. In this confused atmosphere, Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung continued. A person crushed by their own misfortune. The sight of even a noble crying out because they are unable to bear their own weight would always reach the heart. If we had to compare Marquis Beck's seal to, wouldn't it be with a honey-filled rice cake? When you bite into it, sweetness fills your mouth. What are you talking about right now? Count.
Ah.
Ruho was stunned.
Ha!
Viscount Jaw.
So.
Jung sighed. Then she shrugged. It was an attitude of clear disregard and contempt for Count.
Ah.
Ruho. It's fine if you don't know. There are adventurers who go out following a treasure map even if it suddenly appeared before them, and there are those who mock those adventurers. So does your story end there? What? I'm asking if you have anything else to say, Count. To summarize what you've said so far. Look at these unfortunate people. He lost his granddaughter to a noble. That noble belongs to this one. If you have nothing more to say, I think it's best to leave. It is already quite late at night and it would be bad if the meeting is delayed any further. Yo Dash, you cunning fellow. This old man lost his one and only granddaughter. Count.
Ah.
Ruho shouted. It was her grandmother's birthday. Did you know that? The granddaughter was running home to give her grandmother a present when she was beaten to death by Marquis Beck Seal-2. The old man continued to prostrate himself before the throne, his head pressed to the ground. Without even a single glance towards the old man, Count.
Ah.
Ruho pulled something out of his pocket. A hairpin. It was an accessory that women from commoner families often wore. Look. This hairpin is the present the granddaughter prepared. She ran to give this present to her grandmother, but on the way, she bumped into the young Miss Beck Seal-2. Count.
Ah.
Ruho shouted desperately. I wondered if the Count was really desperate to help the old man in his plight. But regardless of the reason, the desperate appearance of a human was very convincing. In the blink of an eye, the nobles forgot the words of Viscount Jaw.
So.
Jung, and instead looked at the old man with pitying eyes. The granddaughter fell in the snow. Then, with a simple smile, she apologized to young Miss Beck Seal-2, saying, I'm sorry, and I should have been looking where I was going. If her apology had been accepted, it would have been just another accident that happens everywhere. Count.
Ah.
Ruho was now exuding confidence. The old man's miserable back, the sympathy being poured onto it, and the face of Viscount Jaw.
So.
Jung, who appeared to be indifferent to everything. All of these factors gave Count.
Ah.
Ruho the assurance of victory. However, young Miss Beck Seal-2 grabbed that commoner child. Anne. Boring. Viscount Jaw.
So.
Jung muttered. It was a voice as quiet as a dragonfly's wings. No one but me heard the Viscount's murmur. Count.
Ah.
Ruho was still speaking vigorously. The eyes of the audience were glued to the Count. So when I looked over toward the Viscount, I was the only one able to enjoy her monologue. Ari wasn't the only one who had prepared a birthday present that day. I tilted my head. Ari. Who is that? The granddaughter. The child who was whipped to death by Beck Seal-2. Viscount Jaw.
So.
Jung responded bluntly. That day was also her grandfather's birthday. At the same time, both girls had prepared birthday presents. Beck Seal-2 had made a brooch with her family crest by hand, but she wasn't able to give it to her grandfather. Why? I had a strange feeling as I saw a glint in the Viscount's eyes. It was like she hadn't heard the story from someone else. It felt like she was talking about a scene she'd witnessed with her own eyes. She wasn't able to do the math homework her grandfather gave her properly. She was scolded. The young miss couldn't show the brooch then. Which child would give a gift to an adult that just scolded them? When the commoner and the noble girls bumped into each other on the road, the brooch fell to the snow. It didn't just fall, it also happened to be stepped on by the commoner girl. It broke. Viscount Jaw.
So.
Jung spoke with a face that seemed devoid of warmth. The brooch wasn't expensive looking. In fact, it's hard to even call it good. It was a flimsy item that wouldn't be surprising if it suddenly broke. But the young miss picked up the broken brooch and shoved it towards the commoner child. And said, "You broke it." Startled, the commoner child hurriedly lowered her head. "I'm sorry, miss. I'm really sorry." However, while young children know how to apologize, they don't know how to accept an apology. In addition, the young miss, Marquis Beck-Seoltu, was often called the brainless young miss and was ignorant. So there was no way her response would be good. "It shouldn't be broken, you broke it." The young miss had guards assigned to her. Well, in reality, the young miss was the only heir of the Marquis. The guards who followed her were also deeply loyal. So when then young miss stretched out her hand. "Guard. Whip." The guard handed a whip to the young miss without any hesitation. The young miss grabbed the whip, whining slightly as the handle was too thick for her to properly grasp. Then the child's whip struck the child's back. One whipped with all her might and the other convulsed as she was whipped. "I'd rather break you." "Ha. Ha. How is this, ha? It hurts, Mississippi. It hurts." "Young miss, I'm sorry, it hurts." "Stupid. You're all fools. Grandfather is an idiot." No one stopped the young Mississippi. It was said that the snow field was covered in blood. Beck-Seoltu's guard collected the whip again. The servant that accompanied the young miss picked up the hairpin from the messed-up corpse. This wasn't out of sympathy for the commoner child. It just occurred to them that they should probably give it to someone. Look. Now, that hairpin was in the hands of Count.
Ah.
Ru-ho. Can't you feel the bitterness in this hairpin? Viscount. After 6 years, the hairpin had become worn. The hairpin, which had probably been polished to be given to the grandmother as a present, had now lost its luster and dust rested on its skin. Old and worn, it was an item that could be seen anywhere. Is the Viscount so cold-blooded? Viscount Jaw.
So?
Jung only smiled strangely when she heard Count.
Ah.
Ru-ho's sharp cry. Is the Viscount's head filled with nothing but the reasoning of sages and the classic writings? Why else could she sit so calmly while looking at this relic with traces of blood, the remnants of death? No. The Viscount doesn't even seem to have human blood. That wasn't it. Count.
Ah.
Ru-ho and the other people were misunderstanding something. The Viscount could see everything. She knew much more than Count.
Ah.
Ru-ho did. She had even witnessed the death of the granddaughter from a closer distance than the man who had his back to us. That wasn't all. The last thing the granddaughter thought before dying. The last thing she said. The way Marquis Beck-Seoltu swung her whip. Viscount Jaw.
So?
Jung knew a lot more than everyone else. Because. My head spun, and I barely managed to spill the words out of my mouth. Viscount. You have the gold dragon's eyes. TL, not gaze like the skill. I'm not sure if this is an error with the Ross or intentional. Viscount Jaw.
So?
Jung turned to look at me. What are you talking about, advisor? I gulped. In the distance, Count.
Ah.
Ru-ho continued to stir up a storm. He cursed at her that she didn't have human nature, and even went on to say that she was an illegitimate child without proper roots. He slandered her as a tyrant that did not show mercy. And he affirmed that it was outrageous for such a person to become a duke. The room erupted, and thanks to that, it created the perfect environment for the two of us to exchange stealthy whispers. The gold dragon's eyes. Yes. The gold dragon's eyes, is there something wrong with them? The gold dragon's eyes can see everything. From an omniscient viewpoint. You have one body but you can see the entire tower. It gives you the ability to see all things at once. That's not wrong. So? In addition, you have Ice River Dragon's breath. My heart pounded in my chest. Ice River Dragon's breath allows you to go to any time you wish. Eyes that can see anything, breath that lets you go anywhere. You have both. If you wished. If this one wished. It would be possible to watch the very moment when the granddaughter was whipped to death. I said. That's your omniscience. That was what gave the Tower Master the power of omniscience. Using Gold Dragon's eyes and Ice River Dragon's breath, you could personally witness all of the death and despair in this world. Those two powers allow you to watch everything that happens in the tower. At that moment. Right answer. Acknowledge that you have overcome the second gateway. Gold Dragon's eyes and Ice River Dragon's breath form the tower's observatory. There was a moment of silence. Purple eyes admired my face. That's right. Viscount Jaw.
So?
Jung slowly opened her lips. A smile gently hung off of her soft lips. Not bad. The information given to the advisor wouldn't have been much. You were able to put all of that together on your own and guessed a project this one planned to use. You. The warrior should receive a reward for finding the correct answer. Viscount Jaw.
So?
Jung reached out and grabbed my wrist. Now, I'll show you the death of the granddaughter. Trickle. I felt something crawl up my leg. It was cool like the skin of a snake. Surprised, I looked down and found darkness on the surface of the water, darkness that I could only describe as a shadow, slowly climbing up my skin. Follow me. In the next moment, I was consumed by the shadow. Schwack. The snow splashed as it was struck by the whip. The balls of snow were heavy with blood. They leapt into the air, but didn't sail very far. In clumps, they plummeted towards the pool of blood that had dyed the ground red. It's your fault. Please, spare me. You dash, it's all your fault. You. Because of you. If it weren't for you. The whip struck the air. The balls of snow sitting on the surface of the pool of blood melted.
Ah.
The little child convulsed. The last bit of the child's body temperature flowed down her body into the snow beneath. A small puddle of water, created by the child's body heat, spread. That is the child. Jaw.
So?
Jung raised her finger. The two of us stood in a dark alley. There were pedestrians on the street, but perhaps they were scared by the aura of the Marquis guards as they all ducked into alleys to avoid them. Marquis Beck Seal too. Now, she is young Miss Beck Seal too. The child the young miss killed when she was 10 years old is laying there. I instinctively tried to run out. But I couldn't. A hand with strength surpassing my own was wrapped around my wrist. No. Why not? We have to go immediately. If we go right now and take her to a clinic, maybe. Perhaps she can be saved. Yes. Perhaps she might suffer terrible pain during the winter season, but as time passes, she would get better and would be able to live a normal, happy life. The Marquis would give them a hefty compensation. In fact, they would probably be able to live a much better life. Then why are you holding my wrist? Advisor. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung smiled. Mr. Kim Gongja. The sound of the whip echoed in the distance. Do you know how many times this one has seen scenes like this? The young miss ferociously beat the body of a young child who would soon die beneath her whip. Someone's winter was ending here. This one is currently 18 years old. However, I have lived an infinite number of lives that couldn't possibly be contained within the number 18. I watched the death of a child as I am doing now, hundreds of children, thousands of children, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, billions, trillions. They all crossed the Yellow River right before my eyes. From the founding of the kingdom till now, December 24th, 2001, I have seen countless infanticides, robberies, massacres, victories and defeats. So far, it was limited to the history of this kingdom. But someday, I will watch this world, no, every world die. And I will not do anything. My throat was dry. Ha! This one could prevent that child from dying. I could undo any number of unfortunate deaths. I could regress and regress and regress until all unjust deaths are eliminated and the entire world becomes just and righteous. However, I won't. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung chuckled. Ever. I will never interfere. Why? Only in this way will all of the misfortunes that occur in this world be this one's fault. The child had died. Huffing and puffing, the young miss kicked the corpse before turning and walking away. The falling snow covered the young miss back. What was the reason for that child's death, advisor? What went wrong that caused her to die? Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung's voice was soft. Is it because she bumped into young Miss Beck Seal too? Was that wrong? Or was it the fault of young Miss Beck Seal too? Was it because she was raised by her grandfather? Was it because she was born with a brain her grandfather wasn't satisfied with? In that case, was it wrong because young Miss Beck Seal too was born? Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung let go of my wrist. It's not. That was all a coincidence. You cannot blame coincidence. No one is wrong for being born. There's no such thing as a life that shouldn't be born. There is only one person to blame. She placed her hands on her chest. This one has the ability to approach the granddaughter and say, "The road ahead is dangerous, go another way." Then that child could avoid the misfortune that befell her. This one could also become a secret friend of young Miss Beck Seal too, and give her private lessons. Then the young miss would become smarter day by day and be acknowledged by her grandfather. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung clasped her hands as if she was praying and looked at me. This one has the ability to do that. I won't. Never. No matter what happens. Suddenly, the surroundings changed. The blood-soaked snow disappeared and the council hall with the flowing amniotic fluid appeared once again. Count.
Ah.
Ruho was still pointing his finger in our direction and condemning Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung. The courtesan of the capital city who lacked humanity, how could she not grieve over a child's death? Why did she not try to help? Advisor. In the midst of the noisy council hall, Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung whispered to me. There is no such thing as accidental deaths in this world. There are no accidental misfortunes. All deaths and misfortunes were deliberately allowed to happen by this one. Every misfortune you've suffered is this one's fault. Because this one didn't move to stop it. Because this one didn't deal with it. And because this one ignored it. Countless misfortunes are allowed to happen. At least in this kingdom. And in time, the entire world. Do you understand what I'm saying, this one's advisor? Viscount Jaw.
So?
Jung smiled like a saint. Then, the surroundings changed once again. This time, it was the scene of Viscount Sun Hyuk-sin eating human flesh. Now. Viscount Jaw.
So?
Jung stroked the back of my hand. It's time to blame this one. My heart pounded. Scream, why didn't you help? It wouldn't be a meaningless scream. This one had the ability to help, and I was right there in your misfortune. Ask me why I didn't save you. It will never be a pointless question. Because this one was able to solve the problem. She clasped my hand. Because that's the type of being this one is. I couldn't breathe. Now you know the culprit that you should point your finger to without a doubt. The one God spoke. This one is the God that never regresses. A God who will not regress for anyone, and will only watch your misfortune. God softly declared. And that's why this one is a God you can condemn. God's name was Jah.
So?
Jung. Chapter 220. Golden Rule, 4. I looked at the girl. The landscape changed rapidly, from the snowy streets where Marquis Beck-Seoltu had done the whipping, to the cave where Viscount Sun Hyuk-sin consumed human flesh, to where Viscount Day
Ha!
Ran led an army to slaughter both soldiers and civilians alike. Kill them all without leaving a single one alive. A general's competence could be determined by two things, being able to kill people well, and having no hesitation when killing people. Viscount Day
Ha!
Ran was a competent general. This is the place of a rebellion. The leakage of information about our operation cannot be allowed. The peasants, the poor, the men and women, old and young. Kill them all and destroy everything. I will take responsibility. Thousands of cavalry slaughtered the rebels. Surrounded by the soldiers, the shoulders of the villagers shook. Some of them had really tried to rebel against the kingdom. And more people had fallen for it, saying, maybe the Lord is really going to start a war. My Lord. Spare me. We are all bumpkins who don't know anything. A politician's competence could be determined by their ability to distinguish their peers and allies. Viscount Day
Ha!
Ran was an incompetent politician. And humans were most cruel when they were competent in one aspect but incompetent in the other. Burn them. The village was set ablaze. A wooden fence had been built to stop the villagers from escaping. The kingdom's soldiers hefted their spears, stabbing at the villagers that tried to escape the barrier. My God! The old men, their wives and their children were choked by the black smoke that covered their village. Soot settled in the lungs of the old chief. Even until his last moment, the village chief didn't know if it would have been a more extravagant death to die at the hands of his lord for rebelling against his order to join the rebellion instead of the hands of the kingdom. He didn't really have a choice. Please God, save us. God was there in that place. Viscount Jaw.
So?
Jung was sitting on a distant tree. As she herself had said, the Viscount was a god that would never regress. To be precise, she was a god who would not help anyone, even if she regressed. Immovable. Viscount. I begged the god who held my wrist. Please help them. This is not fair. I know. Why should they?
Ha!
Ran live while they die? Why must they die alone in pain? Advisor. I activated my aura to break free from the Viscount's grip. But Viscount Jaw.
So?
Jung's gentle touch never left my rest. God's grip was far stranger than mine. There is no reason to do that. The reason some live, some die, and some suffer. That can't exist, right? If so then. Nevertheless, it seems people often need something to blame. The village burned to the ground and the ashes drifted to the forest. Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung lifted her index finger and caught a speck of gray ash. No one can accept that everything in the world happens by chance, can they? There will always be malice behind your misfortune, and manipulation behind your good fortune, so you deserve the sympathy or curses from the rest of the world, right? That's right. The surrounding landscape changed again. Everyone is right. The kingdom's meeting hall. This one will make it so that everyone is right. The witnesses requested by Count. Ru Ho entered the hall. The old man who lost his daughter was only the beginning. The Count seemed to have mobilized all of his power, or the power of his faction, to visit the victims. Among them were even the descendants of people who had been displaced by Viscount Day. Ran. Everyone's misfortunes didn't just happen, they happened because this one stood to the side and allowed it. The meeting hall became more and more chaotic. Count. Ru Ho took the lead to condemn Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung. Many nobles followed the Count and rebuked her. None of these sins were committed by Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung. Count. Ru Ho spoke eloquently. But the Viscount is surrounded by sinners. She didn't even do it unknowingly, she did it despite knowing that. Why does the Viscount protect Marquis Bexiol too? Why does the Viscount protect a cannibal? They have all committed grave sins, so the Viscount, who they all surround, must be the supreme evil. Count. Ru Ho did not dare to say it aloud, but that list of sinners also included the Sun King sitting upon the throne. A monarch who had imprisoned himself for 60 years. Under the Sun King's rule without politics, landowners exploited peasants without restraint, and nobles squeezed those with intellect without hindrance. During his 60 years of indifference, civil unrest and rebellion had been cultivated throughout the kingdom. The Sun King sat upon the throne and endured in silence. It wasn't just the king. The dukes, who were ascendants that had lived for over 1,000 years, had carried out numerous slaughters during those 1,000 years. None of the 6 dukes hadn't committed murder. Out of the hundreds of nobles in the meeting hall, the beings who represented the kingdom, there was not a single one without a victim. It is Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung's fault. Count. Ru Ho was the same. The Count was a strong warrior who had led his army to battle several times. It was impossible for there to be no unjust deaths on a battlefield. He'd ruined the lives of several people. He'd broken several families. And so, he carried the misfortune of several people. Moreover, the Viscount even called a person who had committed a crime lovely.
Ha!
How dare she so openly show her love for someone who has committed a crime? How dare she continue to love criminals even now, when it is not enough even to repent for the past, correct sins, and raise the morals of our kingdom? Count. Ru Ho attacked Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung. But the truth was, he was also stabbing himself and all the other royals and nobles present. Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung is a sinner. The Count was not in pain. Licking the blood from his wounds, he bit Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung over and over again like an intoxicated hunting dog. Yes. Viscount Ja.
So.
Jung, who knew all of that better than anyone else in the world, didn't ask back, "Aren't you also a sinner?" She didn't even declare, "We are all sinners alike." That's right. However, she affirmed, "It's this one's fault." She pointed her finger towards herself and called out to the victims. The young god gladly accepted it as if it was a sweet drink. "This one is a sinner." TL, I think you mean that word that starts with M. The evil god was amused. "That's why, I should be punished." Really an M. It seemed that Count Ruho was too focused on eloquence. If the Count had paid more attention, he might have wondered why the members of Viscount Jung's faction had not made a single argument. What? Even though it was said that the king had no authority, he was still the lord of the royal domain. That was his right guaranteed by the law. There had been many chances for him to stop the Count's tirade and support Viscount Jung. What's wrong, Count? This one just said that I agree with your views. The apathetic Duke was a butcher. And she was a Duke. Furthermore, she was an influential person who did not regret a single murder or massacre she'd committed. She enjoyed her custom of rolling dice to determine a person's life or death. It had been like that for a long time, and it would continue being like that for a long time. There was only one thing about the Duke that had changed. It was just there was now a jug in the world that she wouldn't roll the dice for. But the apathetic Duke didn't shelter the first pet she'd had in 1,000 years. Agreeing with my view means everything is this one's fault, this one's responsibility, and this one's sin, so this one needs to be punished. Marquis Bexioltu, who'd killed a child when she was younger, was now the head of a Marquis family. From generation to generation the Rabbit Marquis monopolized the northern port of the royal capital. 30% of the great river streams that flowed throughout the kingdom belonged to them. The Marquis had a lot of money. The former cannibal, Viscount Sun Hyuk-sin, knew how to use her notoriety well. She removed the mold that was deeply rooted in her estate. She purged the landowners in charge of the windmill and executed the local gentries who controlled the waterways. Then, she returned all of the windmills and waterways in the territory to the family before giving them to peasants at a low price. The Viscount had a lot of grain. Viscount de Ran, who was once a general of the royal family, had once planned a rebellion. She was still good at killing people. She knew how to divide the enemy, how to divide a united enemy, and how to annihilate trained soldiers. She knew the tricks necessary for war. Of those, the Viscount had too many. So, you're accepting my argument? Precisely. But no one defended their master. Unless there was a lack of love for their lover or loyalty for their master, there had to be a reason why all of them remained silent. This one is the greatest sinner in the history of the kingdom, that is why I'd like to introduce a bill. Viscount Jung commanded silence. Secretary, please hand out the prepared bill. If the Count had paid a bit more attention. No matter how the Viscount was called the crazy bitch of the royal capital, she wouldn't remain smiling as witness after witness came to testify against her. Perhaps then he would have realized that this argument in the council was exactly what Viscount Jung wanted. A bill. Yes. This one is proposing a bill by adopting the other party's argument. The Count hadn't had any doubts. The bill will be called the Golden Rule. And that was why he was hunted. Dear fellow members of the Noble Council. Documents were distributed to the nobles. Splash. As the royal family's clerks rushed back and forth, stepping in the amniotic fluid. The documents were distributed equally to the members of every faction. Some might ask the question. As the highest-ranking members of the kingdom flipped through the documents, Viscount Jung began speaking in a leisurely tone. Do we really need a new duke in this era? Some nobles didn't look down at the documents. No, they treated it as if they didn't want to look down at it. Those few were the Leisurely Duke, Absolute Sword Duke, Inner Energy Duke, Stone Medicine Duke, and Black Dragon Duke. This meant that the bill had already been debated among the dukes. This one's answer is clear. Yes, we do need a seventh duke. Among them, the 10,000 god duke was the head of the religious faction, which was the fact count. Ruho was in. Count. Ruho blankly turned his head to look at his faction leader. The 10,000 god duke slightly resembled the heretic questioner as he smiled. I'm sorry, Count. Big Sis asked me to keep it a secret. It was then that the Count realized why the witnesses and evidence against Viscount Jia.
So?
June was so readily available, and who the entire proceedings of that day had been planned by. The kingdom was already owned by Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung. If there were no problems in this era, then yes. There would be no need to establish a new duke. The god who had taken over the kingdom from the shadows said. However, there have been so many rebellions, knockbacks, and rotting stench. Don't you agree? Dear colleagues of the Noble Council whom I greatly respect, there have been hundreds of thousands of people involved in rebellion. Millions have lost their loyalty in the kingdom. Someone has to take responsibility in this era. An impatient noble read the summary of the bill. Taking responsibility is easy. And didn't understand it, so he went back to the first page. Those who have been sacrificed by the kingdom's administration for 60 years. Those whose lives were ruined because they were unjustly involved in rebellions. The families and descendants of those who were ruined. Those soldiers who died because of unjust orders, those who lost their homes because of civil policies. Those who were robbed of their property, had their body parts mutilated, were forced to leave their towns or lost relatives because of the disregard of the royal family or nobles. Those who were subjected to racial discrimination. The serfs who were exploited. To give specific examples of the chaos in the past 60 years, there have been 2 failed gold dragon subjugation orders in the past, 1 civil war, 3 rebellions by nobles, and another by the Red Nails. In all of those, the subjects were unjustly sacrificed. In other words, the people of the kingdom were unfairly sacrificed. The kingdom will accept full responsibility for them. The 7th Duke, who will be established here, will assume those responsibilities. In other words, Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung. The principle will be as follows. The kingdom's nobles all looked at Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung. The principle will be as follows. The kingdom's nobles all looked at Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung. A person whose life has been ruined by the kingdom can pass on the same amount of suffering to the 7th Duke. Torture. The way responsibility will be taken is as follows. The nobles in the Viscount's faction lowered their heads. A person seeking revenge from the 7th Duke may point out the culprit that ruined their life and demand that they are present when the Golden Rule is executed. For example, the freeman Nam Suk can force Marquis Bek Seoltu to attend as a witness. Revenge. And regardless of how much the 7th Duke suffers at the hands of the subject, the witness can never force them to stop or interfere with the execution of the Golden Rule. Witnesses will only be allowed to observe the Golden Ruler. The price of sin. The time and place for the implementation of the Golden Rule will be as follows. The reason this day was chosen for the evil god's trauma. Every year on the 24th day of the 12th month. The last day of the Noble Council's end-of-year meeting. From midnight on this day, the 7th Duke will make a clockwise trip around the royal capital. The starting location will be the Platinum Square in front of the Platinum Tower, and the final destination will be the Platinum Square in front of the Platinum Tower. During this trip, any subject of any age and any sex can go to the 7th Duke and demand the execution of the Golden Rule. Today was the 24th day of the 12th month. This one will determine if the subject is qualified to execute the Golden Rule. Viscount Jia.
So?
Jung had Ice River Dragon's breath. She could watch the past of whoever was in front of her. She would be able to tell if the kingdom had ruined that subject's life. If they are qualified, this one will judge exactly how much they have suffered and how much pain they can inflict to this one. Arms for those whose arms were cut off. Eyes for those who had their eyes gouged out. For those who have too much to be done at once, it will carry over to the next year until it is enough. Year after year. Viscount Jaw.
So.
Jung has gold dragon's eyes. She could figure out the intensity and size of other people's emotions. She would be able to see how much the kingdom's subjects had suffered. While the golden rule is being executed, this one's body will be damaged and I will probably not be able to walk properly, so this one will need someone to support me. The one who caused the most suffering to the subject will be the one to support this one. Viscount Jaw.
So.
Jung asked every influential person she met to love her. She didn't ask them for anything else. Now, they would have to smell the blood of the person they loved from the closest distance. This one puts the above-mentioned bill on the agenda, and as the leader of the Mirror faction and head of the Amethyst Viscount family, I use the right granted to all nobles by the first king to hold a vote on the above-mentioned bill. If passed, the bill will come into effect from tonight. The meeting hall was silent. The sound of running water echoed. Since it was the 12th month, it was probably snowing outside. Dear colleagues of the council. The country tilting duke. The noble who was about to become the 7th duke smiled brightly. It is now time to punish the sinner.